Okay, guys, here we go. So I gave you a Delta assignment to do that's titled Final Review Practice Problems. So what I did is I went in and I made up, that's the wrong one. I made up like a Delta and I screenshotted all of them so that I can do like example ones with you. Okay, so this is as if, I'm in the class with you and you're going to write these questions down into your notebook, okay? So you write this down, pause it if you have to, obviously, and then I'm going to do it with you. So I'm going to do like 12 questions with you. You'll take pictures of them, upload them to Google Classroom, and then you'll go ahead and do your Delta assignment. So pretty much this is like a lesson, but it's obviously just all review stuff. Okay, so I set it up. So the first topic, but these are just pictures, so I'm not live on Delta right now. Okay, so the first one is just a top-bottom review question, and these would be ones that would be like on your final exam. Okay, so top bottom, so our LCD for 4 and 2 is going to be 4. You already are 4 for the first one, but I'll multiply you by 2. Let me just make this bigger because it's easier to write. Okay, so we're left with x squared plus 2x over 4. We can factor the top, take out an x, left with x plus 2 over 4. Then we'll go over to the other side. The LCD is 10x, so I'll multiply by x, and I'll multiply by x, I'll multiply by 10, and I'll multiply by 10. So distribute on top, x squared minus 3x minus 10 over 10x. I can factor the trinomial. So we have x minus 5, x plus 2 over 10, and then let me make a little room. And then this is just a little, a little top bottom, so we'll keep the top. And we'll multiply by the reciprocal of the bottom. I think I left out that x right there. And then we'll just reduce, okay? So we're left with the x plus 2's are gone, right? And then 2 goes in twice, goes in 5 times. So we're left with 5x squared over 2 times x minus 5. Okay, and you could put it into, just like that. You don't need to distribute that bottom out. Okay, but remember, you can always look at show example too before you guys submit any of these to make sure that they're right. Like that you're putting in the answer correctly. Okay, second review topic is a Leah Gu question. So I set it up, I started doing it. So it's a trinomial, so we're just going to factor and find the critical values. After we find our critical values, we notice that this is less than or equal to. So we know that I'm going to include the -6, I'm going to include the -2. The quadratic is less than. Remember, this is my silly little acronym that I made up. It's LEA stands for less than. It means I'm going to shade inside. I like to make a little graph before I do it algebraically. Now I notice there's all kinds of ways that I could present my answer here. I think I'm just going to do inequality notation. Remember, x goes in the middle, arrows shoot to the left, and then place in your critical values. Okay, so you could use the symbols down below to do that. If you wanted to do interval notation, it's including, so it would be a bracket. And interval notation would be good as well. Okay, so a little Leah Go. Remember, pause, rewind, do whatever you need to. Next one, I took another little Leah Go question. This one is greater than or equal to, so this will be shading on the outside, and I can see that it's equal to again, so included. Now I'm going to shade outside. So how we did this in class, we said that x is less than or equal to -1, or, that's what the other O stands for, or outside, x is greater than or equal to 8. And the same thing, you can just use your symbols down here. I would use inequality notation for this one. You want to do interval notation You could, but it'll be harder because then you have to use all the infinities and everything. So much easier if you just use or. Okay, fourth question. Flying here. So remember factoring the difference in sum with two cubes. You guys are good at this. So I wrote down both formulas. We just have to figure out which one to use. So since this is the difference, I'll use the difference formula. So the thing you need to remember is that these are opposite signs, okay? Those are opposite signs. So our A value is the cubed root of the first one. Our B value is the cubed root of the second one. Notice I left the sign alone. You're never using the sign there because the formula takes that into consideration. So the cube root of 27t cubed is 3t. And now I'm just going to sub into that red formula that I circled up here. Okay, so it's going to be 1 minus 3t a squared. So 1 squared is 1 plus 1 times ab, so 3t plus, now b squared, so you're doing 3t all squared. So 9t squared. Okay, and you would, put that in, type it in. Okay, 5. So I wanted to review compositions of functions. So I give you an f function, I give you a g function, and I want you to find g of f of 3. So remember we work backwards on this. Oops. So we work backwards. We're going to first find f of negative 3. So when we sub in, f of negative 3 is going to be negative 6, just, negative 3 squared is 9, 9 minus 3 is 6, 6 minus 12 is negative 6. Okay, now we're going backwards, so now we do g of negative 6. So 4 times negative 6 plus 13. So negative 24 plus 13 is negative 11. Okay, so negative 11 is your answer. There's only one answer here. Composition of functions. Okay, and then I chose another composition of functions written in using a different notation. So this notation, it's g of f of 7, so you do innermost first. So I did f of 7 first. So f of 7, 49, minus 42, positive 7, and then 7 minus 8 is negative 1. Now you take negative 1 and put it into the g function. So 3 times negative 1 minus 3. And we're left with negative 3 minus 3, so negative 6. So negative 6 is my only answer. Okay, I gave us a trig question. Remember, I picked all these based off of the questions that'll be on your final, okay? All right, vertical shift. So determine the equation of the midline. So remember the formula for midline? It's max plus min divided by 2, and we're talking about y values. So our maximum y value here is 5. So 5 plus our minimum y value is negative 3. Divided by 2. Now this does say equation, so you're going to have to type in the answer y equals, and that's 1. So that's what you'd be typing in to delta. Okay, so we did this recently before we left. So it says assume that theta is a positive acute angle. I'm giving you the sign, and I want you to find, I want you to find sine of 2a. So these are all formulas right up here that I would give you. Remember that big formula sheet? So you can write them all down. When you do delta, I don't know which ones you'll need to use. So the one I chose had sine 2 theta, but you could get a cos 2 theta. And you choose the formula to use based on what they want and what they give you. Okay, so I obviously need to do sine 2 theta. So sine 2 theta equals 2 times the sine of theta times the cos of theta. Sine of theta they gave me, 8/17. Cosine I need to find. All right, so we're going to draw a little picture. Positive acute angle means I'm in quadrant 1. So I'm going to extend out, drop down, right angle. I'm going to use SOHCAHTOA, opposite over hypotenuse. Here's theta. So opposite over hypotenuse. You can do Pythagorean theorem, or it's 8, 15, 17 triplet. So now cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So 15 over 17. Put this over 1. Multiply everybody straight across. And we're left with 240 over 289. Hopefully I don't make any mistakes on this. If I do, send me a message, or if you figure it out, then that's great. Okay. 9. Synthetic division. So we're going back to the beginning of the year here. It says, what is the result when this polynomial function is divided by x plus 5? So remember, if x plus 5 is the what I want to divide by, you set it equal to 0 and use x equals negative 5 to do your synthetic division to see if you get a remainder or not. And then from there, we'll come up with our answer. Okay, so remember how to do synthetic division? So first I set it up by first you have to make sure that there's no placeholders needed. So I have a 4th power, 3rd power, 2, 1, and then a constant. So no placeholders are needed. So I've just put all the coefficients in. All right, and then I'm going to divide in -3. So maybe you bring down the 3, you multiply -5 and 3, you get -15. Now you're always adding here. So long division we're subtracting, but synthetic division we're adding. And then you multiply -5 and -4 again, you get 20. Now we add, and you keep doing it. So multiply, add, multiply, add. Okay, so we do know that x plus 5 is a factor. Now they want us to write the answer to this. Well, I started with the power of 4, so that means I'm going to start with a power of 3 and then just descending. Okay, and that would be my answer I would plug in. Okay, 10. All right, so vertical asymptotes. So remember how to find vertical asymptotes? We're going to factor everybody as much as we can. We're going to look and see if there's any common factors. If there's any common factors, that means that there's a hole. So I'm going to take out a GCF on top. Let me get a pen here. I'm going to take out a GCF on top, so 3x. I'm left with x plus 3. I got little dots on the bottom. Now I don't see any holes at all. So in order to find the vertical asymptotes, we just set the denominator equal to 0. So I'm going to have 2 vertical asymptotes here, x equals -1 and x equals 1. So you guys would just click on this right here, and it'll give you some sort of option to be able to put in these vertical asymptotes. Okay, so now I did another one here. Now this one does have holes. All right, so I'll find all the holes. So the procedure is the same, factor the top, factor the bottom, and then we'll look for common factors. And then they want us to write it as coordinate point, so we'll go through that as well. Okay, so we got to keep factoring. So I already did the top. I got to factor a little more. Don't forget that GCF. I don't know if I already said that. So we have plus 9, and we have plus 7. Okay, so here it is. Right here is the hole, right? So you set that equal to 0, and we get a hole at x equals -9. But it's -9 comma what, right? I need that partner of y. So remember, you would use the simplified version. So I would plug -9 into what I have left. So -9 minus 9 over 2 times -9 plus 7. So we're left with -18 on top over -4. So just reduce that and we get 9/2. Okay, and that's what you would plug in. And see how, so you would type that in, this answer, and then it does say that you could press this if there's like no solution, so if there was no hole, this little guy here, but you guys know how to do this. All right, and we got 12, last one. All right, so I got a whole bunch going on this one. So let's see. So it says, so you can't get any of those. Oh, shoot. Whoops. Where did it go? Oh, boy. Oh, there it is. Okay. So determine each feature. So there's a lot of things going on there, right? So you got to get all of them right. Okay, so I wrote down in pink over here all your rules for horizontal asymptote. Remember N and D. So what do those stand for? N is the greatest exponent in the numerator, and D is the greatest exponent in the denominator. So if the numerator is less than the denominator, then the equation of the horizontal asymptote is y equals 0. If the greatest exponent in the numerator is equal to the greatest exponent in the denominator, then the horizontal asymptote is equal to the ratio of the coefficients of those with the highest exponent. And if n is greater than d, no horizontal asymptote. Okay, so I started the question, and I factored the top, factored the bottom. I just happened to notice right here, right, that we have a hole. And the hole is at 4 comma something. Okay, we'll do that in a second. Let's do the horizontal asymptote first, though. Okay, so what do we have happening here? We have n is greater than d, right, if I compare these two. So no horizontal asymptote. So whatever you have to do here, I think you guys click it or something. All right, vertical asymptote. So we're supposed to factor, right? Take out the hole, and whatever you're left with, you set equal to 0. Well, all I'm left with is 2. So 2 can't be 0. So therefore, there is no vertical asymptote as well. And you know what to do on delta, click it or something. All right, x-intercept. So remember, x-intercept is when we plug in y equals 0. Now, for these two parts, you're allowed to use the simplified version, so you might as well. So our simplified version is x plus 3 over 2. So let's use that. Okay, so x-intercept means plug in y is 0. I could put this over 1, cross multiply, right? We get x plus 3 equals 0. So we get x equals negative 3. Okay, so negative 3 would go right in there. And then y-intercept is where x is 0. So y equals 0 plus 3 over 2. So y equals 3 over 2. And you would put that guy in here. Okay, and then I think we do have a little more there. Oh, yeah, the hole. Okay, so we need the coordinates of the hole. So let's go back up top. So we already simplified. We found it to be 4. And you plug back into the simplified version. So y equals 4 plus 3 over 2. So the whole will be 7/8. Okay, so I hope this was a good review for you. Now this, you take pictures, submit this for me, and then you go in and you do your delta. And it's questions just like these guys, okay? And I just pick questions that I know that'll, be on your final for you. All right, guys, thanks for working so hard. Miss ya. Bye.